We're going to move on now to the most entertaining team in world football. Manchester United beat Burnley. Still wildly unpredictable. Still question marks over the goalkeepers. How long can this Manchester United team, Graham, play the way they are playing and pick up points consistently? Because the game against Burnley was won in the last seconds through a penalty that wasn't necessarily clear and obvious. It wasn't necessarily different to the penalty that the referee gave in the first half and that VAR overruled. So it's not like, they had one cleared off the line by a hand, they won the game. It still seems like they're winning on a coin flip, or indeed losing.
Yeah, after the midweek loss to Grimsby, it wasn't quite the return to Old Trafford that Manchester United fans envisaged this weekend. I think the Cunha injury didn't help. Obviously, we did then see the strange decision and not being Shesko on, and it was Xerxes who made way, although he did play quite well. For me, as I've said in recent weeks, I think the issue with this Manchester United team is Bruno Fernandes. He is United's best player. He's the captain. Whether he's a good one or not is open to debate. But he just doesn't fit in this Amorim system. He really doesn't. And because of him, you're having to look for a new number 6. You're thinking about losing a Menu, and Ugarte doesn't work. And he's not a 10. He's not a 6, but the 8 doesn't work in that system. And it's not his fault. It's just as Amorim wants to play. But I think intrinsically, whilst Fernandes is in there and playing as an 8, the system as a whole isn't going to work. And I think that's a huge problem for Manchester United. And it's not going to solve itself. It's highly unlikely to be solved on Monday. Possible, but unlikely. And yeah, but I genuinely think, Sam, that's really the whole problem here with United. I think the rest of the team, you've got a few 10s, you've got your wing backs in, you've got your defenders. Looks like the goalkeeper situation is going to be resolved to a certain extent. But, until they get that midfield working, which is so important to this system, it's not really going to click to the point where Manchester United want to be challenging top 6. I think it's a real issue they've got.
Do you think it's strange that they made the targets that they picked to prioritise in terms of transfers, and for 3 forward players in Sesko and Bruno and Cunha, where if they wanted someone like Baliba, they could have maybe that was more important and should have done that earlier in the window?
Possibly. I think obviously it's become, I don't know whether they think that Bruno could play a deeper role and he's just not been able to do it or doesn't want to do it. Possibly. But yeah, I guess at some point though they've got to choose their poison. You can't do everything, and so that front 3 really needed work, and they've done that. They've done a very good job of it, bringing in those 3, and yeah, but it's a frustration for United, isn't it? You've seen them new players come in, and they do look pretty good. If Sesko aside, because we haven't really seen him. But yeah, I just think they've got themselves into a situation here where they're not far off, but that Fernandes situation is there. And I think it's probably really frustrating for United's hierarchy that you could have sold him early in the summer. Yeah, and I think it's a real lesson to be learnt for all clubs that don't listen to your fans when it comes to transfers and recruitment. The United fans were adamant that they couldn't lose Bruno early in the summer, when it was going around and when he was linked to Saudi. He has to stay. What is Sir Jim Ratcliffe thinking about even contemplating allowing Bruno to go? Whereas actually, if you look back, the sensible thing would have been to allow Bruno to go, and United would be in a lot healthier situation now, in my opinion, in terms of their overall team.
What's your view on this, Kieran, the sort of process versus chaos that seems to engulf Manchester United?
I don't think that they have a strategy. I think they are a reactive club rather than a club that has a 1-year plan, a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan. And that goes back to what we were talking earlier about when it came to Liverpool. And part of the problem is because it is Manchester United. And the smallest story coming out from Manchester United gets amplified through the megaphone of the fact that they've got the biggest fan base in the country. They've got the biggest Premier League fan base in the world. And everybody and his dog has an opinion about Manchester United. Under those circumstances, you really do need people at the top who can just say, this is what we're doing. We're going to stick to it. and we're going to follow this through. I think part of the problem is that you've got non-footballing people have been connected with the club. Dave Brailsford was very good at cycling. Well, there's a difference between cycling and football. I think I've never tried the two at the same time. I don't think it would necessarily work. And just because something works in industry A doesn't necessarily mean it works in industry B. And we've seen that also from my point of view of how many successful business people have come into football who have made millions, and often tens, if not hundreds of millions, and think that therefore they have the recipe to run a football club, and they walk away 4 or 5 years later with their pockets truly emptied, because it is a unique industry. And I think you have to understand the culture of football, and you've got to understand that you are putting all of your investment into 25 young men of varying physical, mental, tactical, and technical skill sets. And it takes an understanding of the industry to be able to get them the maximum out of them. And Sir Alex was able to do that, but it's proven to be beyond the capabilities of everybody that's followed him.